engineers coming into biology. That was like the origin of SynBio.
Lab-grown CBD, plant-based meat.
Programming the DNA of cells as easy as programming computers.
Partnership with Google. Ginkgo Bioworks CEO Jason Kelly.
I think a lot of the ideas we had back then were kind of stupid. Anything in biotech that was not a drug, like a therapeutic, has like really gotten wiped in the last few years. So the root problem is it's alien technology, like literally 4 billion years advanced over ours. We can write code for it, but we have like no design specs, no nothing. Everything is reverse engineering. GLP-1s, they're $1 trillion product. I mean, they're crazy. It's like the biggest consumer product since the iPhone.
You mentioned China.
We're in danger of losing even therapeutic R&D drug discovery to China right now. We're fucked. We got to just start. And the first step is kill the bench.
So hi, Jason. Welcome to Accelerate Bio.
Thanks, Sam. Good to be on.
Good to have you on. And so what I want to do today is explore the journey of synthetic biology, past, present, and future. And of course, Ginkgo, which has been at the forefront of this movement for, I think, the past 17 years now and counting.
Yeah. Doesn't seem
so,
like it, but yeah.
Yeah. It's
10
been
years
a while.
since we did 10 years since we did Y Combinator. So,
Okay, 10 years plus. Still a good stretch. So what I want to do, I want to dig deep, and I also want to pay equal attention to the massive potential of SynBio, which I'm sure we will both agree on, and also some of the, I guess it's fair to say, equally large challenges that we are still facing today to get there. So does it sound good?
Sounds great.
Okay, so let's begin. Can you give us like maybe a 2-minute history of synthetic biology and what are the paradigm shifts that made this programming life story possible?
Yeah, I mean, so sort of origins of it was back at MIT, like in the early, kind of late 90s, early 2000s. So one of my co-founders is a fellow, Tom Knight, was a professor in electrical engineering and computer science at MIT. And since like, I think Tom started on the faculty in like 1972. So I have this great black and white photo of Tom with his master's thesis, which is this like refrigerator sized mini computer, right? So Tom like was that generation that basically went from mainframes to mini computers. And then he was a computer architect, like he architected a famous mini computer called the Lisp machine. And then when it went to chips, Tom taught the semiconductor design course for years at MIT. Okay. And so that was his background until like the mid 90s when Tom is like, oh, forget computers. The interesting thing to program in the future is going to be cells. And the core idea is, hey, DNA is digital code. You can read it with DNA sequencing, write it with DNA synthesis, like DNA printing. And if you can read and write code, could you bring in like a lot of the learnings from computer science and electrical engineering, a different type of code, right? Sure, like digital bits, but could some of the analogies, some of the learnings hold over as we moved into biology? And so that, it was really like engineers kind of coming into biology. That was like the origin of SynBio, and in particular, like computer science and electrical engineers. All right. There had been like chemical engineers that sort of came in even around the early days, like in the Genentech era, that were like doing fermentation and all that sort of stuff. But what was really unique about synthetic biology was like the electrical engineers and computer scientists. And it was not like the easiest interaction between that group and the biologists out of the gate at MIT. Like I remember I would go to like the biology retreat because I worked for this guy, Drew Endy, and he was in the biology department, and I would show my poster, highlighting my grand acts of genius of like these genetic logic circuits and all this stuff. And the biologists were like, this is garbage, and so there was a real tension there. And so anyway, I can talk a little bit more about like where that went and what I think a lot of the ideas we had back then were kind of stupid, but some of the ideas were good. And one of those ideas in particular became the basis for Ginkgo. And so I can talk about that too. But that was kind of how it got started. It was a little bit like computer scientists and electrical engineers recognizing DNA as a coded language and saying like, well, what could we bring over from our world?
There's a great founding story. And yeah, maybe you can paint for us, like, first of all, the bigger vision of what the industry as a whole has been trying to achieve, and then where Ginkgo sits in all of that.
Yeah, so let me tell you, like, okay, it's now 20 years later, like, what the hell has worked and what has not, and what do I think, like, would be cool for, like, a new generation of people to work on, right? So All right, so if I rewind the clock back, like '03, we had a bunch of ideas around basically trying to almost like standardize components within biology in order to make them more reusable. Right. And then we even had ideas around like logic circuits and things like that. Like if I used a repressor to turn this gene off, that's a little bit like an off switch or something, or an OR gate or something. And so we would have these elaborate things, and, a little bit of that is a good idea. Like, antibody drug conjugate in pharmaceuticals, where an antibody has a toxin stuck on it and the antibody delivers it to the tumor. So the toxin goes only to where you want it to go. That's a little bit of logic, right? Like, am I in the right place? If yes, deliver drug, right? If not, don't. So that level of logic is valuable. We were trying to build like 8-bit adders out of 17 repressors. It was like trying to make biology act like a computer when biology is fundamentally not a computer. So those ideas were stupid, and I think like not worth it. What I think ultimately was a very good idea that Tom taught me was this concept of abstraction. And so in Tom's era, if you wanted to be a computer scientist, you also had to be an electrical engineer. Okay, because like, how in the world could you program like this elaborate, giant thing with all the wires and everything else if you didn't know like how it worked? Right now, of course, like today, my 10-year-old can like draw boxes on an iPad or something and program a computer. So like, what happened in the intervening, 50 years? And what happened was abstraction. Right. We went from working directly at the hardware level, added things like assembly code, operating systems like Windows, programming languages, Java, graphical programming languages. Now ChatGPT, you can talk to it and it can write code, right? So we basically separated computer science and electrical engineering into two different disciplines. And the unappreciated, like, powerful thing about that is then they each got to develop their own cultures. Okay, so computer science went in the direction of like math, basically. And electrical engineering went and ran out like physics, right? Like lithography, TSMC, like automation, right? This was the atoms one, and this was like the information one. Okay. And then, but the whole time they kept talking to each other. So every time you had more powerful chips, the software people could just invent more powerful software and it would magically work. Okay. They didn't have to have like a big powwow about how to make it all work together. All right. Because they had clean abstraction. All right, so Tom Knight, my co-founder, he gets into biology. And he's like, okay, I want to program DNA. It's like programming computer code. And the first thing I got to learn how to do is pick up a pipette. Because how in the world can you program biology if you don't know how to do a polymerase chain reaction, a PCR reaction? If you don't know how to culture cells or transform a cell with new DNA, right? If you don't know what a restriction enzyme is and how to do that at the lab bench, how in the world could you have the right to write DNA code?
So you're basically saying, let's abstract all of that away.
No, Tom's like, what the hell is this? Like he's like, it's electrical engineering and computer science all over again. Like you shouldn't have to know how to do tedious lab work to get to program DNA. Like those are two fucking different things. And like this one, the lab one, is much closer to electrical engineering, right? Like it's in the world of atoms. It needs automation. It needs standardization. It needs scalability. You want to push the limits of the physics on what you could do. And then design the DNA. Well, that's a lot more like computer science, right? Like that's a theory of the mind. Like, do we understand how biology works? Like, what is our versions of, object-oriented programming in DNA or whatever the hell else? Like they are just very different disciplines, but we're still in the era where it's the EECS department, electrical engineering, computer science all together, right? And we need to split them, right? We need to split like laboratory biotechnology from like genomic design. And that Tom was just deeply right about. And we are still now, it's 20 years later, and I swear to fucking God, if you go to get a PhD at MIT or you want to be a bioengineer undergrad, the first thing they teach you is how to use a pipette. It's like we've not done it. Like we have not actually split the two. And at Ginkgo, we're trying to we have been banging on this problem with funding for the last 10 years to try to rip the two apart. But like that to me is the core issue of biotechnology. Is until we get those two apart, we're kind of in the 50s of computers, and it's brutal. Like only the high priests get to program because they're the only ones who knew how to put all the electronics together and knew how to program. Like it was just too big of a lift. And that's what biotech's like today. There's tons of young people, cool ideas, things they'd like to do with biotechnology, but they got to go learn to become bench molecular biology lab experts. And they're like, what the hell is that? I don't want to learn that, And so anyway, does that make sense? That idea of like abstraction? Because that to me is the lesson of the last 20 years is we haven't solved that still. And so it's still the field repels people because a lot of them want to mainly do the programming. They don't want to do, the electrical engineering equivalent, if that makes sense.
That makes a lot of sense to me, and I think it's a very clear analogy. But maybe just to backtrack a little bit, you said the initial thesis for the industry was, let's just program biology, and you said that doesn't work. Yeah. Why does it not work? Why is it a stupid idea?
So it's not that it doesn't work. It just works like only so well, basically, right? And like the short, the short form of it is, I think. And by the way, we computer scientists and engineers, I was a chemical engineer, like co-founders, computer scientists and so on. Like engineers coming into biology, I think intrinsically they don't have like an intrinsic respect for like the complexity of cells. And like the best way I can explain it to you, like, so you get a sense of like how crazy the complexity of cells is like, how did we get them? Like, how did we get to modern biology? Like you look out the window, you see a tree or something, right? Like how did it get there? And the way it got there was a genetic algorithm has been running on planet Earth starting 4 billion years ago when we first had like the first replicating organisms. And the way the algorithm works is you get mutations, changes in the code, like a genetic algorithm if you ran it on a computer. You make a new generation. If it's better, it stays. If it's worse, it dies. And we repeat that. And we use the incident energy of the sun on planet Earth every day times 4 billion years is what's powering that genetic algorithm.
It's pretty amazing.
And when you look out the window today, you see the integrated effort of all that energy. Okay, that's why biology is a fucking freak show technology. Okay, right? Like everything we've invented, we've just burned, fuels over the last 300 years to like make our staggering acts of genius as humans. But biology had 4 billion years to bake in like just molecular complexity at a level that is bananas. Okay, right? Like it's just nuts. Like it's nuts microscopically. Like when you just drill into it, it's like, how in the world is it doing it? Like how's it all hanging together? Like why is it, why do you have a tree last 100 years, right? Like it's repairing itself. It's fucking crazy, right? It's just collecting energy. It's producing nanotechnology. It's wild, right? Like
we have many different layers of complexity also stacked on top of each other, and we probably don't understand either one of those layers.
Yeah. And by the way, like, no offense to Sam and OpenAI, but like still the only remaining, the only form of general intelligence is still biological. So what the hell is going on? Right. But the reason we have the conceit of hey, we ought to be able to design it and stuff is because I swear to God, it runs on code. Like, and that's just wild, right? Like it's wild. Like in the same century that we basically built modern computing, we discovered that information was encoded across generations digitally in biology.
We're not the first ones to have designed this.
Amazing, right? Yeah. It turns out if you want to transmit information, it's translated less lossy in a digital format, right? And so like fucking biology figured that out 4 billion years ago and like has been piling up learning since then. And it's amazing. And so like that's the root problem. So the root problem is it's alien technology, wildly, like literally 4 billion years advanced over ours. And we can write code for it, but we have like no design specs, no nothing. Everything is reverse engineering. And so like and that's your engineering puzzle. And it looks nothing like any other engineering field, right? Because every other engineering field, we took like basic scientific learnings and then ratcheted up complexity, all that's human understandable. In fact, the first field that reminds me at all of biology is AI neural nets. Because now you suddenly have these things with 1 trillion parameters, you're like, oh, I don't know how it works. And I'm like, let me introduce you to systems biology. We should start studying these things like systems biologists study cells. Like, I think Anthropic had a paper out about this. Like, that's totally the right answer. Like these things are like basically little pieces of alien tech, and you're gonna have to reverse engineer them. Like that, go call some biologists, right? Like that. So anyway, but until that, every other engineering field is very much like just layered logic.
So that's a very difficult starting position for sure. By the way, if you're enjoying this, hit subscribe. We drop a new episode weekly, exploring how AI, biotech, and human enhancement are shaping the future. And if a friend would love this too, send it their way. It really helps us keep going. Now back to the pod. Just to get back to Ginkgo, so we understand the context now.
So I'll give you the history of the company. Yeah.
I guess what I'm interested in knowing is, so you outlined for the past 10 years, you have been trying to abstract away the electrical engineering part for the scientists. So like how far along are we in the process and what are the main challenges right now?
Doing that. Yeah. So how do we try to do that at Ginkgo, right? So what I basically tried to do was to build out essentially automation, like laboratory automation, to do the lab work that was being done traditionally by like someone with my training, like a PhD at the lab bench. Okay. And so we started from the very beginning. We were always building on automation. And there's like different challenges within that we don't have to get into today. We can, but there's like moving liquids, there's moving across multiple different pieces of lab equipment. There's a whole like basket of stuff that you need to address if you're going to like automate things. So that was like one big investment area we made. The other thing we invested in was trying to improve like the design tools, like that, the computer science half of the equation. Like, could we make more standard genetic elements? Could we make more standard strains? And I would say the automation side of the house was more successful. And that's, if you fast forward 10 years, what I basically did was all these research partnerships. We've done 250 R&D partnerships, Novo Nordisk, Pfizer, Merck, Bayer Crop Science, industrial biotechnology companies like ScienceGo, like chemical companies, Givaudan, flavor and fragrance company, all customers of ours, where they were basically asking Ginkgo to program an organism for them to meet a spec. And then I would get royalties and milestones on the back end. And that was the business model. And we did we built a decent business doing that. It just takes a long time to get to the royalties and milestones. So that like flywheel, like that kind of app store, has taken longer than I would like. And then additionally, a lot of and this is, I think, an interesting topic for this podcast and the people watching this, like the non-therapeutic uses of biotech. There was like a wave of them from we did YC. We were the first biotech in YC 2014. In the next 5 or 6 years, there was a ton of remember all these animal-free meat companies, like the Impossible Foods and things like that. There was a whole bunch of those. There was a bunch
I think those haven't done so well recently.
Oh, yeah. None of this. So this is my point. None of these have done well. Yeah. Cannabis companies, fragrance companies, cosmetics, anything in biotech that was not a drug, like a therapeutic, has really gotten wiped in the last few years, basically. Since interest rates went up and risk came out of venture in a lot of areas, it's now coming back. But so that whole crop of what was called SynBio on the application layer, that really dried up.
Is there an opposite example of something SynBio, yours or somebody else's, that has really worked and scaled and is on the market now and people are buying it?
Yeah, I mean, so this again comes back to your what you want to call SynBio, right? So my definition of SynBio would be around basically the tooling that you use to design organisms. A lot of people just think of synthetic biology as everything that's not a drug. Okay, that's they kind of that there was two sort of worldviews on this or something, and so of the stuff that's not a drug, nothing has been a major blockbuster. No, I would say nothing anywhere close to what a drug is. There's a couple companies that have done things in the chemical industry. It's called Genomatica. Their thing has gone to decent scale, but it's not a crazy commercial success. It's just Cargill has built a giant facility. There's a $1 billion plant being built in, I don't know, some country in Asia that's also going to do that. And it's just to make basically petrochemicals with microbes. So it's huge scale, but it wasn't a moneymaker, right? In the way that a drug is a moneymaker. And so so there's been things like that. The animal for meat stuff has been like not great, I would say. Like the best winners are like, I guess, Impossible, but like even they have not done well. So like cannabis fell off, and so like there's that these are people basically trying to make like cannabinoids with fermentation rather than extraction from the plants. Materials, there was like a bunch, spider silk, leathers. There was a bunch of leathers. That stuff has not done well, right? Like, so these were all like, no one knew if they could be good applications, and they just didn't pan. And there's a little bit of a chicken and egg where, is it because we're not good enough at engineering the cells, or is it because they're not like ripe markets for disruption, right? Unclear, right? It's like, why did electric vehicles happen when they did? Was it batteries? Was it Musk could market it to a certain scale to like get over the hump that everyone else had died on before? Could you have had electric vehicles like 20 years earlier, but you needed to market them better? It's not clear. But like there was a moment where it felt like you could have flipped meat. And like that's a giant ass fucking market, right? And by the way, chicken's like almost impossible. Like they're super good at converting like feed into mass, but cows are not great. So like just in terms of like dollar for dollar, like you ought to be able to beat cows. Now, whether I like steaks, like whatever, but like just on a pure basis of like, can you do the thermodynamics? Like, can you make it cheaper? You ought to be able to do beef, and you certainly can do like high end things like certain fish, chicken stuff. And like, but I think all that's kind of off the table right now. Like, there's not enough consumer demand. It's not the vibes right now, right? Like, the vibes are no longer Soylent, right? The vibes are Meat Man or whatever, like Steak Face or whatever this shit. I don't know.
I guess come back for sure.
I don't know. It's different. So like like that stuff matters. These are consumer products. So like I would say like there was not like a crazy winner out of that, which is a bummer. Right. Because we could really use in the industry something other. I mean, Ginkgo's business, thank God, like we're a platform. We were able to move into therapeutics. But like a lot of these other companies were just long a certain application area, and it just didn't work. Right. Like, and so that was just killer. And so that's kind of the story. My take on the story. Yeah.
That makes sense. And so I guess what is your hunch? Like, are we on the cusp of like unlocking some super big use case, or is it going to take a while? Are there some like other unlocks that we need to make first?
I mean, the use case I like that's coming up now that I'm like the most excited about is basically like kind of the human enhancement, or like the consumer biotech or cosmetic biotech or whatever you want to call it, but like non-therapeutic, but used with humans, which surprised me actually. Like I kind of assumed all the non-human stuff would happen first. But then, like, I think it was like 2 years ago or whatever. Like, so Brian Johnson was like an early investor in Ginkgo, so I'm friends with Brian. But like, he had gone and like done that stuff in Prospera, where he got like the gene therapy or whatever. And then I was like looking on Twitter, and there was like all these other people also doing it, like random guy, like here's me, like also getting my my whatever unregulated gene therapy from Mini Circle, and like I was like, holy crap, like like people are like very willing to do this, and so like that was, and then now you see it like exploding with all the peptide stuff. So there's sort of an interesting thing, and then by the way, that's just like the off-market peptide stuff. I find amazing that people are doing as much of that as they are, but like the GLP-1s are. Like they're a fucking $1 trillion product. I mean, they're crazy. I think they're like a $10 trillion product. Like it's like the biggest consumer product since the iPhone. Like it's wild. Like they're incredible. So I think that's opening the door to a whole new category that weirdly, like the kind of like the other thing about the synthetic biology people, they were also a little bit like on the edge. Like the main line of biotech has always been therapeutics. So if you weren't doing therapeutics, you were also just like a weirdo. So there's like a weirdo community of biotech people, and they're like, I think they should go all do the consumer stuff, because like, I just think that's going to work. Like that's going to be a big market. You got to watch the regs, you got to be safe, but like I think there's just so much potential there. It's crazy. So on the app layer, that's the one I like the best coming up. I can talk about the tech layer, but for the apps, that's the one I think is cool.
Let's talk about both, but I definitely want to double click on human enhancement, because that's the OG community that this podcast actually originated from as well.
Okay.
And so when you say human enhancement, are we talking about longevity? You mentioned Brian Johnson, or are we talking about, like, I don't know, other types of superpowers?
Yeah, anything. I mean, muscle mass, I think, is a big one. Like, yeah, like any. I mean, I think the easy way to think about it is like, regardless of how long, like, there's going to be some, whatever, like things break down. There's going to be some irreducible complexity. Probably the brain is like completely fucking impossible, to just have last forever or something. So like, there's going to be some upper limit, but like along the way to that point, like, just be like you're 25 years old. Like, I'm 44 now, right? Like, let me tell you, like, I feel different than when I was 25. It's fucking awesome when I was 25. So like that, like, who is not going to want that? Everybody's going to want that, right? Like that is like market size, 8 billion, lifetime TAM infinity, right? Like, so, and then exceeding that, like, sure, I don't know. What are the things? You want to see better? You want to think smarter? I don't know. Like, there might be other like edges, but even just that is like superhuman, as like, even not even like in 80, like that is like superhuman at 40, right? Like to be able to have those effects. And so like, I think that's just a monster market. Like, it's incredible.
I think the market is super obvious. Like you said, who doesn't want to be stronger, smarter, faster, live longer, like all of those things? Or I don't know, like maybe even some more esoteric, like X-Men abilities down the line. But I'm sure there's going to be market for any of it if it's possible. So I guess, are you saying that the tech is now ready to like start seriously going in this direction?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I think the tech's always been there. I think your challenge with this stuff is all regs and safety and how you do it. Like because I think the tech is already there because of pharmaceuticals, right? Like we've got like we have built up a lot of stuff. The area we've invested the most in biotechnology is like is interacting with people, because that's just where the money's been, right? And so plants is like a second one. We can talk about plants. I'm actually bullish on plants. If another regulatory problem, but like a stupider one. The regulatory problem on people is a real one. Like you got to be careful, and there is like safety is like foremost here. So like that's the puzzle to figure out. I personally think you got to do again, Brian's pioneered a lot of this, but like the regular monitoring. So I think it's the two together. Like, if you were regularly tracking a lot of your biomarkers, then you can like kind of self-check on interventions. And if people are going into that eyes open and no one's being like lied to about stuff, then I think you could adjust the risk tolerance regulatorily, and it would help humanity. Because like, holy crap, if this like muscle shit that Brian took in Prospera actually works, like, what the hell are you talking about? Like, that's an amazing boon for humanity. Like we shouldn't be like gatekeeping that. But at the same time, like, I feel a little better Brian taking it, because he's monitoring himself all the time. And he's not just sort of like going in blindly and trusting this, And so like, that's where the rubber's going to meet the road on this stuff, in my opinion, is like, how do you like walk that line in a way that like is net beneficial for society, not like weirdly, unsafe or screwing things up. So, but there's so much potential. It's incredible. Like, the GLP-1s prove it. Yeah.
Sounds like overall you're optimistic, and you feel like the
tech is there.
It's going to happen.
The tech is there 100%. Like the tech is there for that stuff. It is entirely a question of regs and safety. So
back to Ginkgo. Before the digression, we were talking about the infrastructure that you're building, and were you saying that that's also one of the bottlenecks for maybe not human enhancement specifically, but for the space as a whole? Yeah. So let me talk about the tech layer now. Okay. So, and the only other thing I would get back to on the app layer is plants, because I think that's like another cool thing that like people could play around with if they were like the next generation of app developers. But like, we'll come back to that. So on the tech layer, the thing I'm most excited about. So we have tried like everything under the sun at Ginkgo in order to try to like improve basically the productivity of scientists doing the work of designing an organism for a commercial application. And we are kind of unique in that like in general, biotech is a very product-centric, verticalized industry. So like, I'm a drug company, and I'm not just a drug company, I'm a mRNA drug company. I'm not just an mRNA drug company, I'm a circular mRNA company. And then I have a unique tech platform that does circular RNA.
And like that is like Orbital, that company that just got bought recently. Like that, there's like a line of like vertical integration, like all the way down from like the end product to like this very specific technology. Okay. And there's like not a platform to be seen in there horizontal, right? Like other than like they're ordering pipettes and kits shipped from Thermo Fisher. Okay. Right. Like, like there's like people selling them stuff to just do the lab work, but there's not like any horizontal, there's very little horizontal tech. And so, and I'm overstating it, but I'm not that much compared to like tech, where if you were launching a new app, you're building on AWS and this, that, Kubernetes. There's like 15 other fucking pieces of like software in between the customer and like the server. Okay. Right. Inclusive of your app. And so none of that stuff exists in bio. All right. So anyway, so we were building, we tried like a lot of ways to make that horizontal. And then we had customers across like all these different app areas. So unlike a normal biotech that only sees one kind of biotechnology, we had microbes for corn, we had mammalian cells for RNA with Pfizer, antibody stuff, all these different things. And my conclusion is if you want to get horizontal, and you don't want it to just be the same old shit, you need to bet on automation, and the automation needs to be like total automation. In other words, like there's like no people in the lab. Okay. Because once you partially do it, you're screwed, basically. That's my conclusion. And so what we've been basically building out at Ginkgo, and it was us, and there was a company called Zymergen out in California that had the same set of problems because they were doing a wide range of stuff. They were like more Silicon Valley, so they actually started building their own hardware. We bought Zymergen like 4 years ago now or something, and then we made a new generation of their hardware. And it's basically a way to link together. We now have like systems that like we're designing now that are like nearly 100 pieces of equipment into one big setup and have the whole thing be automated and all programmable. And that scale is like, if you can do that scale where you have every piece of equipment you want and the whole thing is programmable, I think that could potentially break the back on this stuff. But like anything short of that, I don't know if it does. Like I tried a lot of different ways to do it, and I don't know that it does. And so that's basically what we're working on. Like that's our project, is like, how do you get total automation of all lab work so that you don't have humans at lab edges? Other than, you need to feed the machine and there's like operator stuff, but you don't have like PhDs at the lab bench anymore. And that's like that's what I think for us on the technology side, like that's the next 10 years. We're selling those robotics directly to people now. Like it's more of a Thermo business model. Like we'll put our robots in at Merck or Pfizer or wherever. But like that's the only way I see us actually like breaking out. And the tech just wasn't there previously, to be honest. But it's pretty much there now. So anyway, but does that make sense in terms of there's like a subtlety, because people played around with a lot of stuff. There's like cheap robots and one robot arm and all these other things. I just think like, unless you are automating end to end, there's no one in the fucking lab, you're screwed.
So you're saying anything with a human in the loop is still bottlenecked on that weakest link? And,
yeah, 100%. Yep. And I tried 6 ways from Sunday solving the problem. Like I had, ways where you had functional teams and I had organized stuff. I had scheduling software. I had a million things to like try to coordinate people better. Who were all also doing automation. Like they were like partially automated, not enough. Like you need total automation. Like we should close all the labs, like as soon as we can to force it, honestly. Like, cause we're just running into a wall here. Like I think like we're just hitting a wall on the cost of doing research, particularly in the United States. Like this is why you partially see a lot of the drug discovery now is moving to China. It's like, well, they have cheaper hands. And so it's like a hand limited industry. And like, we got to fucking fix that. Like it just has to die. Like it has to die. The lab bench has to die.
That's a very strong opinion. And I love that. And when you said now it's finally possible to do that, is it because of AI, computer vision, or like, what is the unlock?
Yeah, it's a combination of things. So it is like, I would just say like modern software. So like just the ability to kind of like manage and schedule and handle all this stuff. And then on the AI side, it is, basically like the ability to have people who are not programmers or automation engineers write the code needed to execute laboratory work on robots. So it's like kind of like cursor style stuff, but for writing automation code rather than writing Python or something, And so so it's that connection that open, because the key here is if the only people that can use the robotics are engineers, we're fucked. Like you need to give access to, remember my computer scientists? Those are the computer scientists need to be able to use the automation, and they are biologists and scientists and people who understand, the human heart if they're trying to develop a drug for the heart, or understand, soybeans if they're trying to be a soybean person, like whatever. They are like biologists, not computer programmers. And they now will be able to submit whatever protocols they want into automation thanks to these AI systems. So that's where like the AI layer I think is going to pay off the most, is going to be on the ability to like translate scientific intent to automation code. And you pair that with general purpose robotics and modern software stack, and you shut the bench down. That's it. And by the way, I can talk about like, I think that is much more democratizing than whatever the hell we've been trying to do with things around like decentralized science and DIY bio. But like that is, I think, what we have to do.
How far away are we from this full automation?
So I think we are like hardware wise, we've got it. I think software wise, it's like a year away. And then I think you can pretty much do it.
Base case scenario, fully automated lab, human scientist just says, let's research XYZ. How, like, by what factor does it accelerate the whole space once we have this?
So here it gets now into the apps layer, is that right? So I think like the grizzled, sad, pharma veteran will be like, well, all the money's in the clinical trials, or like, right? Like just some like sad, like, ruin your ambition, young person kind of comment. And like I'm not like of that ilk. I personally think we're actually bottlenecked on like good biotech products, and especially outside of therapeutics. Like what broke the animal-free meat stuff, for example, or something, was just like you couldn't really get it cheap enough. You couldn't really get it scaled enough. It wasn't good enough technologically. If you were like literally growing like the meat cells or something, right? And like, what does animal-free meat look like in my view? I think you actually go straight into plants, right? Like what we do right now is we grow soybean, we feed soybeans to a calf, the calf grows up and turns into a cow, and then we butcher the cow, and now you get beef. But it's got to eat a ton of soybeans.
It's very inefficient, right?
Yeah, why don't we just grow the beef on the soybean plant? Right? Like that. Now that would be awesome. Okay, right? And like but boy, do we not know how to do that today. That is a serious genetic engineering project. And so that's completely limited by the cost to try random stuff and like get yourself there. It's all on essentially the tech dev. Okay. And there's like a zillion things like that. Building materials, advanced materials. Why don't we have cotton that's like as strong as Kevlar? Like all these things are, I don't see why not. Like those all seem like totally doable things. And like, but like, like how are you going to get there? Well, you got to try a lot of stuff. Well, that's expensive. And so you get killed on like your prototyping costs. It's not like prototyping software, right? Where you're able to just like bang on it for basically zero marginal cost. And so the game is, can we get scale? Like once we centralize and shut the benches down, the real magic is on day one, it's not going to be wildly cheaper. It is going to be cheaper, but not wildly. But now you've created an environment where like you've done the big leap. Like you split computer science from electrical engineering, and now all these people can get to work on just the orders are coming in from the scientists every day. And if I deliver them cheaper and faster, I'm turning into TSMC. And then you just grind it. You grind, you invent new technology. There's tons of ways to make liquid handling cheaper and faster, tons, right? And by the way, this is a microscopic discipline. So it's the same principle as with chips, where like so much of the gains was by getting smaller. Biology is very fucking small. Like we work at human scale today at the bench pointlessly, right? Like all of that is a function of the fact that like we're stuck with fucking people doing this by hand, right? And so if we start to grind on it, I think eventually you get huge gains, 100,000-fold, million-fold cost reductions in trying stuff. And the way you know this is true, by the way, is we already did it once in biology with DNA sequencing. So DNA sequencing is the thing we automated the hell out of. And that's because it's just the same protocol over and over again. And so we just got to work. There was a ton of demand for it. And you were always being asked to do the same thing. put the DNA, and here's the DNA in liquid. Tell me what the letters are. And so how much has that dropped in cost since the Human Genome Project? Like fucking 10 million fold. It is like kick the pants off Moore's Law, because like it's a fucking molecule. You can make it very small and cheap. Like it's amazing. And so like why haven't we been able to do that with all the rest of bioengineering? Because it's too variable. Like, and so that's where you need to get integrated automation, and then you got to drive that fucking flywheel into the ground. And we got to just start. And the first step is kill the bench. Kill the bench. Kill the bench.
So I hear you say we automate the lab fully, so that's a step function unlock. Then we can start climbing this like exponential takeoff in cost reduction and quantity. And is that like the main bottleneck? Or
yes,
after we have done this, is there going to be like another bottleneck that we need to unlock to, or is it just exponential?
I personally think that's the main one. That's my 2 cents. Yeah. Because I think if you develop a product that has crazy market potential, every other barrier gets blown right through. Like, that's the fucking truth. So our issue in biotech today is we are unable with to make the products. And in fact, the real issue is the cost to like make it and then confirm. In the case of drugs, you have to also show that it works. That's the trial part. The total cost of that means that very few people get to try. Okay. And so I think we have to figure out how to like basically make way more apps, especially outside of therapeutics, that we try and like demonstrate that they're awesome. And then like, yeah, some will have regulatory, some will have this, that, the other thing, but you'll get through it. Like it'll happen, in my opinion. But right now we have basically very few app developers. Like it is like how many people were developing applications for maintaining computers in 1962 is a little bit like who is doing genetic engineering right now. It is a ridiculously small number of people who really get to try. They like that's just the truth.
Okay, so we're abstracting away a lot of the wet lab work. We're automating it with AI. And in this scenario, we are still having human scientists deciding what experiments to run. Are we going to get, in your opinion, into a scenario where AI is doing more of the decision making as well? Like you mentioned Sam Altman, I think he would have us believe that in the next 5 years, like there'll be no human scientists. Is this just a sales pitch? How realistic is all that?
I think it will definitely work, yeah, but not. I think what it'll let you do is basically. So if you think about like what's going on when you're doing science, right? So certain fields of the science are like purely theoretical, like math or theoretical physics or something, right? And so there it is just like thinking, and then trying to check your work. And in theoretical physics, actually, the theorists come up with something and then they kick it to the experimentalist to go try to prove it. Okay, right? All right, so that there are those types of fields. But then the majority of science, and certainly the majority of biology, like 99.9%, is the way we learn new things is experimentally. Okay, and so you might have a hypothesis, but like in reality, what happens is you kind of follow the experiments.
Yeah.
All right, and so what makes a good scientist is basically having good taste about where to go explore. And then you report back what you found. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so like what's interesting is like the exploring path is not necessarily the most complicated logic. In other words, like you see the results you got and it's sometimes pretty clear like what the next experiment is to do based on what you saw to kind of keep going down that path. And I think all of that will be very like agentically doable. And it's not that people can't do it. People can do it too, like relatively easily. It's just if you have agents doing it and automation, I can let them go chase down 1,000 little trails, 998 of which are going to end nowhere, and 2 are going to be awesome, and it can totally do it. Like that's going to be neat. So that'll be a different way of like I think doing just like fundamental science, as opposed to the idea that it'll read every science paper and then just like figure out Alzheimer's or something. Fuck no, that's not what's going to happen. But if you wanted to study Alzheimer's, you might say, okay, I want an automated lab to chase down 10,000 trails that are all kind of decent ideas around Alzheimer's, and then just tell me which 2 hit. And like, why wouldn't that work? Like, like that kind of like experimental work is not as like it's not the high end of human intelligence. It's sort of like base logic, if that makes sense.
I agree. I mean, like the Industrial Revolution also hasn't happened by somebody reading a lot of papers and coming up with the perfect solution. It was like a bunch of Scottish guys in a garage tinkering with like a very basic steam engine and perfecting it, right?
Yeah, I'll mention one other thing that's kind of cool about biology, just for like the engineering nerds who are just considering it as a substrate. So the other thing that's crazy about cells, right, is you put new code in and it changes the cell physically, right? Like cells are like atom producers, right? Like they are in the real world. You know, I love the world of bits, and God bless the tech industry or something, but like all the bits that they work with are virtual, okay, right? Whereas when we write code for a cell, it is it is programmable. You can make it do something new, but it like compiles atoms, not bits, okay? And so what that means is if I make changes, and you can do this at high throughput, like to 1 billion cells, I give them all little different edits. They all grow up into 1 billion different physical objects. Okay, like when Boeing wants to design a plane, they can't make 1 billion planes and see which one flies the best. So they're kind of stuck trying to simulate it on a computer. Well, with cells, like we can like physically we don't need to simulate, the virtual cell or something. Like a lot of the power is that you can cheaply physically instantiate biology and just try it. Just fucking try it. Like make it in the world and see how it does. And so like that learning loop is way more powerful in biology than any other engineering discipline. It's like 3D printing on like infinity steroids. Like you are literally making different objects, like atomic, like atomic scale objects, different by just changing code at pennies, right? We have nothing else like that. You can't do that with chips. You can't like tape out 1 billion different fucking chips, like cost a fortune, right? But you can with cells. You can with cells, and so I think that loop is going to be crazy. Like the models can try stuff really fast. They can get back data on what works. Like all that feels real good. But we gotta get people out of the lab, right? Like it's just you're fucking broken on the lab work. It's hopeless. So like I am like fully radicalized on this at this point. Like it's the thing that's holding the whole field back, in my opinion.
So is what we're building it, for lack of a better mental model, like the NVIDIA, but like using biology, real life?
A little bit. I mean, like I don't know the best analogy, to be honest. I think like what you're the closest analogy, like the macro analogy, is like you want a compiler and debugger to basically be able to like quickly try a lot of different code and not have it cost a fortune. Right? You want coding to feel like computer programming, not in its predictability, but in its cost. Okay, like in its cost. Like it is just that, like it's just cheap for you guys to fuck around, right? Like that's the difference, and it's not cheap to fuck around in biology. It's just too expensive. And so you just massively constrained in what people try. Like it's just brutal. And you're massively constrained in who can try it. Right. So like I was around like 2008, there was like this whole thing around DIY bio, and like we'll have like basement hacker labs, and like it was like really fun. I like went to all this is like also happening around like MIT in that era. I was like friends with Matt Cowell and all these guys that like got it going, and like that also, like if you look back 20 years, like that didn't work. And so there's a lot of like a sense of like, oh, people are like being gate kept from this or whatever else. I don't actually believe that. Like, I don't think academia is some crazy gatekeeper. I don't think like regulators are breaking down the doors of basement labs. It is just too fucking expensive to do it by hand. That's it. Like that's it. It's that simple. Like we like have to make it cheaper, and otherwise it'll always be just for the high priests.
Okay, so let's now project 20 years from now, you have made it exponentially cheaper. We're in this full automation scenario. Everything is working well. So how different does the world look like compared to now? Like what is the main thing that's changed?
Dude, I have no idea. It'll be cool. That's
an honest answer.
It's really crazy. I mean, I think I do think this is another place where like the regs will matter some, because like take plants. So this is another thing that like I'll get on a soapbox about. So, but like so like there's a glowing petunia plant. I don't know if you've seen this, right?
I've
It's
seen
like
it.
light bio. It's really cool. We did like a little project with them. I know Keith, the CEO. It's awesome. Everyone should buy them. They're amazing. Okay. Need to make them brighter. They're working on making them brighter. They have a brighter version. Like the regulatory to go put out the brighter version is like they have to do the same regs again as the previous. It's fucking crazy. It's like, why is there any regs on a house plant?
What is the concern? Like, what is the justification?
What is the concern? There's no concern. Okay, so then you might ask, like, why is there any regulation anyway? Why are they even getting a phone call? What does the government say? And if you look, the origin of regs on GMOs is the document called the Coordinated Framework on the Regulation of Biotechnology. Okay, it came out in like 1982. It was like Reagan. All right, and like it was because at that time genetic engineering was like what AI is today. Okay, so like Genentech had just come out, human insulin, like just crazy. There's like awesome Time magazine cover where like the cover of the magazine is Herbert Boyer, who's got like crazy fucking mustache, the hair, founder of Genentech. And in the top right corner of the Time magazine, this little fold down thing. And it's like inside this issue, Princess Diana's engagement. Okay, right? So like the caliber of like fame associated with genetic engineering back then was very analogous to AI today. All right, so everyone was freaking the F out. Okay. And so what do? They're like, ask the president, we got to regulate this, blah, blah, blah. So they come out with this document. And if you read it, it's wonderful. It is absolutely a wonderful document. And it says genetic engineering is like electricity or fire. Okay. It is a general purpose technology that can be used for many different things. And so we should regulate the end product of the technology with our current regulatory framework and not create some special regulatory regime just because you use genetic engineering. It's very analogous to AI. Like the AI people are also fighting this battle. They're like, don't reg just the fact that we have a model. Like reg, if the AI is being used for radiology images, then sure, there's like regulations for that. If it's being used on your phone to, whatever, be your therapist, maybe that's got some regs and then some, but it's like, it depends. And that's exactly what it said about genetic engineering. Don't regulate genetic engineering itself. Okay. And of all the regulatory agencies, only one followed that rule, which was the FDA. When it came to human drugs, it's total fair fight. If you make a chemical like aspirin or you make a gene therapy, regulated the same. They assume dangerous, you do safety trials. But if you make a glowing petunia, and somebody else just breeds a petunia that's a different color, this one has zero regulation, and this one has like 5 years of regulation. And that's bullshit. And so that's a problem. Like that means that we don't get all, and where this really, why does this matter? Like this matters because like we have no startups associated with agriculture in this country, which is not like I'm in Boston. We have tons of startups here because this is where all the therapeutics are. But I'll tell you where they don't have startups, at Purdue University in Indiana. They got a great ag school, tons of amazing students, awesome professors. You cannot get any venture capital because the regs on plants are absurd. And they're indefined. Like this is a problem. Like if we don't fix this kind of stuff, you don't get the crazy, take a look. This is what I want it to look like in 20 years. All right. Like, there you go. Okay. I want the dinosaurs there. I want us growing the fucking houses. Like, you don't get any of that unless you fix ag regs, in my opinion. Like that is like one of the biggest one of the biggest areas for biotechnology. And it's totally, they've just made up the regulations in defiance of the president and they should fix it.
I mean, I personally share your sentiment. A lot of tech is over-regulated, including this. But I guess briefly, is there a way to stillman the opposite, which would be, I mean, you shot dinosaurs, you like to talk about Jurassic Park. Are there like a lot of unpredictable, downstream effects that can happen?
Yeah, are there a bunch of unpredictable downstream effects associated with AI models?
True. Probably.
Yeah, that's fucking life. I mean, that's life. I don't know. That's why we have a society. But we should be thinking about it. But I'll just tell you, we did think about it, and I think we were just actually there was capture within the regulatory agencies that is not reflective of what the executive order called for. And so I think we should just go back to how it was outlined at the beginning and give it a shot, And by the way, if we need to leave out food, let's leave out food. We make plenty of food. Like, food is fucking fine. It's all the new stuff. That's actually what we should be doing. It's all the new materials, all the new, again, houses, everything, all the stuff. And all that is like currently off the table. Right. And that's got to get fixed. It's a real problem.
How likely do you think it's going to get fixed? And like, what is going to be the catalyst for fixing it?
I think we will do it with ag. And I think the catalyst will be, economic potential in the farm states. That is it. I think we are tying our hands behind our back for our farmers in the country, where like they are only allowed to grow the same products they've been growing for 200 years. But they're like, why can't they? Why do you have to sell cotton and you can't sell Kevlar cotton that would sell for 100 times the price? Like, like that's not good for cotton farmers, right? Like, like we should change it. Why are soybeans only being used to produce meal for cows? Like when they could be being used to make a ton of different stuff. Like there's just like all these things that are like unlocks. And I think it's going to be driven by pressure, like economic pressure in the Midwest. Like that's what should do it. And like, I think we have, in this administration, people that like want us to lead. They want the U.S. to lead, and like in this case, we're not leading. In my view.
I mean, I was going to ask you about that real brief. Actually, is competition going to be one of the big triggers? You mentioned China. Are they? Yeah. Is there a risk that they're going to get there faster, and then the U.S. is going to be like, "Oh shit, okay, now we really need to deregulate," or are they not there?
They've changed their regs on GM dramatically, so they are now like a competitor in GM. They haven't like deregulated more yet on plants than us. That hasn't happened, but they are like peer to us now. We'll see what they do. I would say when it comes to automation, I think the only way we keep a lot of science in this country is to deploy automation. I think we are like starting to lose the talented hands race to China, and we're never going to beat them on that. So I do think that's another thing that is like drive. And there's like the AI action plan mentioned, like we need these cloud enabled labs. Like there's awareness of this in the administration, but it's like, like we got to get on that race. Cause like we're in danger of losing even therapeutic R&D drug discovery to China right now. That's like in process.
Like as far as you know, is this a priority for the Chinese government to? Yes. To lead on this? Like, is it one of the
100%? Okay. Oh yeah, this was a big and they're very public about all this stuff. Yeah. So that there was a like that the whole biopharma like nascent startup ecosystem they have right now is all a consequence of a very direct investment that they pushed 5 years ago. And I do think it's a major, and the reason it's like more impactful than even just losing therapeutics, which would be bad in my view, is like what I said at the very beginning of our conversation. Therapeutics is the working app layer for genetic engineering. And genetic engineering, if we lose that, is like losing computer engineering. Like we cannot like losing genetic engineering is, in my opinion, a bigger deal than losing information technology. And if we give away pharma, we give away genetic engineering. And that's a fucking huge mistake. It's crazy.
Well, I'm glad you at Ginkgo are doing your part to prevent this.
We're trying.